Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a very basic pincushion. It's just a plain square pincushion, but it's an ideal project for a beginner sewer, or in fact your very first project. So let's get started.
You will need fabric, scissors, pins, needle and thread, ruler and dressmaker's chalk. You need to cut out 2 squares of fabric 4.5 inches or 11 centimetres by 4.5 inches 11 centimetres. I'm using a piece of card that I've already cut out and traced around. Then you need to get your fabric scissors and cut around the square that you've just drawn. If you have a rotary cutter and a ruler, you could use your rotary cutter to do this, but I'm using my scissors. Once you've cut the fabric out, you need to put both of the right sides together. So both the right sides of the fabric are sandwiched together, and on the outside you have the 2 wrong sides, the side you're going to sew on. Then you need to pin these together to make sure they stay together whilst you're sewing them. Then I'm going to measure the opening I'm going to leave so I can turn it the right side out. I make a mark in the centre and then I measure 3/4 of an inch out from the centre on each side, giving me 2 marks, 1 each side of the opening. So I'm going to start sewing at one of the marks and sew all the way round to the other mark. I'm using my sewing machine, but you could hand sew this part if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't want to. If you are using your sewing machine, remember to back tack at the start and the finish. Sew to the corner. When you get to the corner, leave your needle down, lift up your foot, turn around and carry on down the next side. I'm using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. If I am coming to the next corner, needle down, lift the foot, pivot and then carry on down the next side, being careful to keep my seam allowance at 1/4 of an inch. And taking my pins out as I go along. Next corner. Carefully put the needle down with the hand wheel at the side of the machine, pivot and carry on again. Continue all of the way round, all 4 sides, and remember when you get to the chalk mark that you made on the bottom edge to stop and to back tack to make sure that your sewing won't come undone. The next step is to trim the corners. So you're going to cut each corner off, making sure you get close to the seam, but please don't cut your sewing, otherwise you'll end up with a hole. About 1/8 of an inch away from the sewing. If you wanted to, you could trim all the way around the edges, but I'm just going to leave it for now. Now it's all sewn up and the corners are clipped, we need to turn it the right way round. So we're going to have the right side of the fabric on the outside. You might need to use a tool to do this, or you could use a pencil, a pen or a knitting needle to poke out the corners, because you want all of the corners nice and square. Once you've done this and you're satisfied with it, you just need to give it a quick iron to press it, and then you'll be ready to start stuffing it. I'm using a polyester stuffing. You need to fill it quite well, but don't overstuff it. Make sure that you get your stuffing up to all of the corners and continue stuffing until you think you've got the right amount in. As I said, don't overstuff it, because if you do, it won't lie very flat. Once you have got it filled sufficient, just put a couple of pins in the top to secure it before you start hand sewing. Thread a needle with a matching coloured cotton and then tie a double knot in the end. Now you'll be ready to start your slip stitching or ladder stitching. Start at one end just inside the seam allowance, and you're going to take 1/8 of an inch on one side in a parallel line, swap over to the other side directly opposite and take another another 1/8 of an inch stitch in a parallel line, and then go directly opposite and take another stitch, and keep going in this fashion until you get to the end. Every so often you're going to need to pull the stitches tight. I do have a detailed video all about ladder stitch, also known as slip stitch or invisible stitch. I will share a link in the description for this video. It's well worth looking at it, and it does go into a lot more detail. Once we reach the end of our seam, we need to tie a knot. So we do one little stitch, and then into the loop we thread our needle through once or twice, pull it tight and secure it, and then we thread the needle back through the pincushion and come out in the centre, and then pull it a little bit tight and cut the thread, and there we have it, finished pincushion. You can now put some pins and needles in it and start using it. Well done.